Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers, it has become part of everyday operations. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution helps you catch income, identity, and trade-in fraud in real time without slowing down the sale. Stop fraud. Keep deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the fourth week in May 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. This week, we saw Stellantis lay out its turnaround strategy, promising 11 new models in North America by 2030, most starting under $40,000. We at Automotive News have also been digging into the state of trade negotiations as the USMCA review process kicks off this summer. Joining me today to break down this week's biggest stories is Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us at Automotive News. Mike, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Larry Velaquette, reporter covering Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru. Larry Legend, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. It's a tight well, too, Kel.
And we have another bonus panelist this week, everybody. Let's give a round of applause for Hannah Lutz, is Automotive News assistant managing editor, which means she validates paychecks. So we have to be on our best behavior. Hannah, welcome back.
All right. Thanks, Cal.
Hannah's got 2 young children, so she's here to babysit us.
Yes,
that's exactly what's
she is here to babysit grown men. All right, so let's start with big news this week. Mike, Stellantis held its investor day on Thursday, and CEO Antonio Filosa laid out a $70 billion plan through 2030. Walk us through what stood out to you from that presentation.
Well, it's a pretty ambitious plan, $70 billion. We're talking something like 60 new or redesigned or refreshed models globally. If you want to read all the nuts and bolts of it, read Vince Bond's coverage. He did an excellent job. But a couple things stood out to me. One, in terms of the product strategy, sort of the duality of what they want to do. There's a huge push for affordability. There's something like 9 models under $40,000. A couple of those models are under $30,000. They were talking the 25 to 30 range. That's exactly what they need to be saying in today's day and age. But at the same time, they're still trying to push margins up and try to push the ceiling up in a few areas. You look at Ram, they're adding 3 muscle trucks. They're bringing back the Rumblebee. And they didn't give us exact prices, but I think you can imagine the top of the line 700 plus horsepower SRT version is going to be pretty pricey. We've always wondered sort of what the ceiling is for truck prices, and I think they may be trying to push it a bit. Jeep's getting a halo in terms of a scrambler pickup, so that may push prices up. They're also partnering with Jaguar Land Rover, sort of looking into the premium off-road space. That's something Ford's trying to dip its toes into as well. So the duality of the product stood out to me. The second thing I would say is what they're doing with brands. Now, since Antonio Filosa has been CEO, we've wondered if he'd keep all those brands he's managing. And a couple weeks ago on this show, we talked about the report that came out saying he'd focus only on 4 core brands. Turns out that report was correct. But what Larry and I were saying then was we're hoping he doesn't starve the other non-core brands. And I thought he might do that. But turns out he's not. Look at what he's doing with Chrysler. It's a regional brand, what he calls it, not one of the core 4. They're still increasing their product portfolio by 300%. They're going from 1 product to 4. They're getting some entry-level crossovers that should help them. Dodge is getting an entry-level. Tim Kuniskis called it a gateway to the brotherhood of muscle. So I think it's smart that they recognize the importance of these brands here in the U.S., but at the same time, I'm not sure, Larry, if they can keep all 14 or whatever the total portfolio is going.
Yeah, you know what? I will say this as a recovering Chrysler reporter, continuing to recover Chrysler reporter. I did 2 of these. I give Vince all the credit in the world. It is a long slog going through these presentations, especially when, I did them when it was still just, just Fiat and Chrysler. Now you've got the French brands in there as well. It is a bunch of information. So trying to get this all packaged together is it's a yeoman's task every 5 years when they do this. I do like that they do this though, right? That they lay out for investors. Here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan. It's always kind of set them apart. because they do it so publicly. Now, with all that said, the stuff that they said they were going to do in 2009, they didn't do. The stuff, most of it. The stuff that they said they were going to do in 2014, a lot of it they didn't do. So I am happy to see that they finally got off we're going to pour everything into Alfa Romeo because that's our ticket. That finally is dead. I agree with that. And the plan to expand the Chrysler brand, which is hanging on by a thread and has been hanging on by a thread for a very long time. I love that plan. I think that's really, really well done. I wonder, however, if the powertrain plan wasn't like co-written by ExxonMobil. there's a with gas the way it is and where it looks like it's going to stay for a while, banking on big V8s as your ticket to prosperity. I don't know that that's a great plan, but hey, as we say with every one of these, every 5 years, we'll see.
Well, Larry, it's interesting because when I spoke to Vince Bond on our Friday episode of Daily Drive, I asked him about powertrain, if there was going to be any hybrids or EVs, and he said there was no inkling of that thus far. So that is to be determined. But by the shaking of your head, it looks like it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Hybrid technology has been around for a long time, and you really have to enjoy buying gas to not at least explore putting hybrids in your vehicles, right? You really have to like that. There's just, this technology is 30 years old. I don't see why every vehicle that's not a full EV isn't at least a hybrid. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Larry, how realistic do you think Stellantis' promise of 9 vehicles under 40 grand by 2030? How realistic is that? I mean, given where their prices sit today.
It's funny to me how affordability moves. Affordability used to be 25,000, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000. Now we're stretching to get these vehicles under 40,000. There's more room there, obviously, but you were talking about 4 more years of inflation. So 40,000 in 2030 is, 32, 33,000 maybe by today. It's going to be a tough slog. And the only way that they're going to do it is to do what they should have been doing all along, which is commonality, which is, getting the best relationships with their suppliers so they get the best technology at the best price. And that is going to take a sea change internally at Chrysler / Stellantis / FCA, whatever you want to call them today.
/ all the things.
Yes.
Now, Hannah, what stands out to you about Stellantis' announcements?
Well, there's so much packed into the day, and a lot of it was brand specific or competitive. The biggest thing, my takeaway is, the consumer oriented one, and it's oriented toward the company too. But what Larry was just talking about and Mike touched on was affordability, and what those affordable vehicles will actually look like and how quickly they'll get them to market, because there is such a need right now. Will the need be as strong as it is right now forever? Probably not. Will they get here in time? Hopefully. But what will they look like? Will they be kind of bare bones and low tech to get to this low price? Or will they be able to have that commonality that Larry was talking about so they can get good prices from suppliers to make these vehicles affordable, but useful and relevant to what people expect today?
Manual windows for everybody.
Wait a minute. Windows? Like they're supposed to roll down?
Yeah, I know, right?
Fixed glass is so much cheaper.
So Mike, the company announced it's bringing a compact Ram pickup to challenge the Ford Maverick in 2028. What does that tell you about where Stellantis sees opportunity in the market right now?
Well, it tells me Stellantis has been listening into this podcast because they're hearing us sing the praises of the Maverick almost every week.
Wait, we have a rule. I got a request from a listener that we no longer say the word Maverick. So we're going to have to come up with something different
after this episode.
After this episode.
No, I think there's plenty of opportunity in this space, but what really stood out to me is that Stellantis is going to be trying to out America's car brand, America's vehicle brand, Ford. I think this was very intentional that Antonio Filosa mentioned multiple times, hey, there's one product in this segment and we think we can take some of its share. and that product's built in Mexico. So for all Ford's business advertising talking about how they build more in the USA than any other car brand, the fact that all their full-size pickups are assembled here, built here in the US, the Maverick is built in Mexico. So Stellantis is going to be bringing this Ram Rampage to the US. They mentioned they're going to be building it here, so they can claim that over Ford. It's also a vehicle they already build in South America, so they know how to do it. There's probably not going to be a learning curve, quality issues in the launch, and it's a vehicle they know how to have success with. So it seems like this is going to be a major challenger to the Maverick.
You know, let me say one thing here. This is a product that you talked about, the small pickup, the compact pickup. This is a product that they've had in that market in South America. It's a product that they've had and they could have brought at any point in the last, over the last 10 years, right? The reason that small pickups went out of favor is because they took share away from large pickups, because large pickups are more profitable. So the automakers, when they got rid of those compact pickups, years ago, they did so because it was taking sales away of larger pickups. And they thought, well, we can get them consumers to stretch into the full size pickups. That's why they killed those products. Now they want to bring them back. They should have never left in the first place.
Can I just say, to put a bow on this conversation, the only thing I didn't like about this plan was the name. Can we talk about this? Fastlane 2030, where the STLA was capitalized and everything else is lowercase. Can this not become a trend, please?
This might go over some of our listeners' heads, but Mike, I think you might get this. So do you ever see that SpongeBob meme with SpongeBob with his hands behind his back and he's going like this? When I read Fastlane, that's how I read it, was like that meme. Like, Fastlane, it's the Fastlane. I thought it was our producer, Jake, like playing a joke because the name being just really just kind of tacky and corny. But I was like, oh no, this is really how they're spelling it.
It's corny.
Well, it's memorable. You guys remember it so well.
Not for the right reasons. All right. Coming up, we'll talk about the USMCA review and what's at stake for the auto industry. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Robotaxis are moving from novelty to reality. And this week on Shift, we're digging into what it takes to scale them safely.
Nuro COO Andrew Chapin talks about the company's partnership with Uber and Lucid, a plan that could put more than 20,000 Lucid Nuro robotaxis on the road, starting in the Bay Area.
We are really trying to achieve a superhuman safety bar over the long term. That is the expectation of the public.
Chapin also explains why he doesn't buy the idea that there will be a huge number of commoditized autonomous vehicle providers, and where he sees Nuro taking the biggest risks in making robotaxis truly ubiquitous.
Join us for Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Fraud is no longer just a risk for auto dealers. It has become part of everyday operations. According to Experian Automotive, nearly 9 out of 10 dealers say fraud is a top concern, and 70% say it's on the rise. We're talking about real deals slipping through, costing dealerships $10,000, even $20,000 per incident. And it's not just one type of fraud. You've got forged income documents, fabricated salaries, synthetic identities, even trade-in scams. The worst part? Catching fraud often slows everything down, adding friction to deals and frustrating legitimate customers. That's where Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect solution comes in. It's designed specifically for dealers, helping you quickly detect income, identity, and trade-in ownership before it hits your bottom line. No guesswork, no unnecessary delays, just faster, more consistent verification so you can protect your profits while keeping the buying experience smooth. Because the goal isn't just to stop fraud, it's to keep good deals moving. Experian Automotive's Fraud Protect. No more. Risk less. Sell smarter.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Larry Velaquette, Michael Martinez, and Hannah Lutz. So this week, we continued our package of stories looking at trade, tariffs, and the USMCA review that's kicking off this summer. Hannah, you led that package. What are the biggest takeaways from this look at trade and tariffs?
Well, this series that we're doing, it runs over 3 weeks, and it's really comprehensive. So, I'd encourage our listeners to take a look to see what they want to learn about, and they'll probably find it by the end. It looks at virtually every angle of the state of automotive trade. It's hinged on the review of the USMCA, which starts in July. So for me, the biggest takeaway so far in this process of editing and putting it together is just a reflection on how much has changed in the industry over the last year because of these trade rules that have totally flipped and had, forced automakers to reassess everything and force suppliers to do the same. And how much it's really cost the industry, which Larry wrote about for next week. So I think this series shows really how much is riding on the USMCA in preserving or reestablishing trade, especially for North America.
Well, what are some of the possible scenarios we could see with this USMCA review?
Yeah, we went over that in a story from this past week, and there are a lot of changes that could come out of it. It's hard to predict exactly what is going to happen, but the talks will cover rules of origin, labor requirements, and even like the review schedule. So, on rules of origin, some want the rules to account for electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. For example, with batteries, they're currently listed as a core part. So, they have to meet a 75% regional value threshold to avoid duties on a vehicle, which is very difficult today. Most of all, automakers and suppliers are looking for stability and certainty and clarity. There's just been so many unpredictable changes over the last year. That is what they want. And the USMCA was really, it set up North America for free trade and sort of preferred trade in a way. But now Canada and Mexico are often paying higher tariffs than almost all of the other automotive regions, the EU, South Korea, Japan, and the UK. So, I think that North America, Canada, Mexico are wanting to get back to that treatment that they got before as one region. And the UAW is weighing in also. Members of the UAW are asking for a complete rewrite of the USMCA that includes a continent-wide, a North American minimum wage or a wage floor. So that's just like a real small slice of what is at stake and what we're covering here. But yeah, that's some of the things that people are asking for.
Well, speaking of the UAW, Mike, the UAW has been vocal about what it wants from USMCA renegotiation. What are the union's main criticisms of the current agreement?
Well, they don't like it. They don't think it's too much better than NAFTA, and they weren't very fond of NAFTA when it first came out. So one of the main criticisms is that at least pre-tariff over the past year, they don't think it went far enough to punish automakers for building in Mexico or in Canada. Before Trump issued these tariffs, I think it was something like 2.5% for noncompliance. And they don't think there's standard labor practices across the three countries because, again, it incentivizes Ford, GM, Chrysler, et cetera, to build their plant in Mexico because they can pay lower labor rates and they don't have to hardly face any tariff impact, at least before Trump. So, like Hannah mentioned, they want to see some type of wage floor negotiated between all three countries. They want to see enforceable labor standards so that plants in Mexico can't get away with things that plants in the US couldn't get away with. And they want to see a higher penalty that would disincentivize companies from building overseas because they threw a bunch of stats at the media showing since USMCA went into effect, the rate of building in Mexico, in Canada, hasn't slowed down. And that's what they want to see. They want to see that reversal, that reshoring back in the States.
Well, how realistic is it that we'll see the kind of changes the UAW is asking for, like a continent-wide wage floor?
Well, I don't think it's that realistic. One, because it would take a lot of coordination between the three nations. And two, maybe this is the most important one, I don't know that Donald Trump will be picking up Sean Fain's phone calls anytime soon. I don't see any reason why he would care at all to work with or listen to what the UAW has to say. So yeah, they have to fly the worker flag and say what they want out of this. But do they have any real power? I think that's an open question.
Now, Larry, you spoke with Toyota's Ted Ogawa recently, and he had some strong words about what would happen if USMCA isn't renewed. What did he tell you?
Well, what he expressed was the same sentiment that you'll hear from every CEO, right? Every CEO with a presence in the United States. They need this to A, first, be stable again, and B, they want restoration of the free market that existed before the tariffs went in. Right now, Canada and Mexico pay a higher tariff than vehicles coming in from Japan, right? That's only 15%. They're getting 25% on vehicles from Canada and from Mexico. It's not sustainable for them. It's one of the reasons I think you're going to see them move the Toyota is going to move the Tacoma back into Texas. They just moved it to Mexico, or moved the production from Texas to Mexico in 2021. And they're going to spend $2 billion to add onto the Texas plant to move it back. What they need more than anything, though, is just stability. They need this renewed. They need to know what it says. They need it enacted after it gets passed. That's goal number one. But it's going to be a catastrophe for automakers of every stripe if these talks fall apart.
Now, Hannah, one of the tools that came out of this package was Automotive News' new tariff calculator. Tell us about that and why it's useful right now.
So yeah, props to John Irwin, our reporter, who's really taken the lead on tariff and trade coverage. This was his idea, and so the way it works, it's drop-down menu. So you can choose the part or the product, so a vehicle and a specific part that you want to look at, and then you choose the region of origin, and it gives you the tariff rate. So it's really useful. It doesn't include every single part, but it includes most parts that people would be interested in and gives them the rate estimate. So we're happy to put that together for our all access subscribers.
Awesome. Now, Hannah, as you mentioned, this is a multi-week project, and we're not done yet. Give us a taste of what readers and listeners can expect in the coming week about trade and tariffs.
Yeah. So in our first segment, we really set the stage for the USMCA talks. We described what's at stake for the auto industry in the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then in our second, we looked at the possible outcomes of the review, the impact on suppliers and on dealers and vehicle repair. And we explained why automakers may consider more factory localization and automation. And so in this third installment, we will have a very clear focus on the global impact of evolving U.S. trade rules and the effect specifically on automakers. Like Larry was just talking about with Toyota, how they've moved production, how much it's costing them, and what they're going to do next. And we'll also publish a timeline of tariff updates to help everyone follow along.
All right, perfect. Hannah, make sure I get everybody. Larry, Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Kel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kel.
Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, y'all. That's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on Stellantis' turnaround plan, the USMCA review, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We're off on Monday for the Memorial Day holiday here in the U.S. Come back on Tuesday for an interview with Neuro COO Andrew Chapin about the company's robotaxi partnership with Uber and Lucid.
Uber made the bet on Neuro that it did, partly because of where we are in our journey and the confidence that they were able to build in terms of our timeline to market. And so that really in the next few years is going to be a big differentiator. Just can you offer this service or not?
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.